council election, you must have information.
It's been more than already, I think, more than 9 years plus. The due date was 2012, and we have still not submitted its initial report for the longest overdue initial report. Although Malaysia has a Persons with Disability Act, it has not, talking about the Education Act, the Housing Act, the gaps in the Act. So what do we have? We have disability handled by a Jabatan OKU that sits under the Jabatan Kebajikan, a welfare department. This department is buried in a social welfare mode when it should be a rights-based mode and development orientated so that it is in line with CRPD. We should have a standalone Jabatan that has not in the Act. Can you of having an Act? There's been also a long delayed harmonization of domestic legislation with CRPD, as I mentioned. But let me refer to you to Article 8.2 of the Federal Constitution, that it still does not prohibit discrimination against disability. It is time for our Federal Constitution to reflect that there is equality in the law, that the Act must also include and update the definition of disability to permit inclusion of other groups. As you know, as we grow older, as we find scientific research will tell you, there are so many other disabilities that come about. Disabilities anytime. You need to include in the definition ableism there and harassment by repealing Section 41 and 42 of the Act, which right now protects the government. We need to enforce the rights of PWDs by setting up a tribunal to handle infringement cases of the rights of PWD. Of course, we need withdrawal of the reservations of Article 50, also reserved, and of course, sign and ratify the optional protocol. Accessibility before I go into digital accessibility. Physical. Although provided in the Act, it does not make mandatory the implementation of minimum standards and universal design as set out in Bylaw 34A of the Universal Building Bylaws, UBBL, as we commonly call it. We need to also enforce the implementation of the Street and Drainage and Building Act 1974 for accessibility of all public infrastructure, including transport-related infrastructure. Let's look at digital accessibility and access to information. You know, the revenue website for LHDN is accessible to the blind to fill out their tax forms. If that website is accessible, why are other government websites not accessible to the blind? They want our income, they want our tax. The 19 era has also deepened the inequalities and furthermore education. The national policy on inclusive education has improved, yes, while the government's zero reject policy. However, in practice, there is still segregation. Children with disabilities and their families experience it daily. Inclusive education starts at preschool and not at primary school, mind you. Universal design and learning is not a reality in classrooms. I don't know, many of you must have read The Sun, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, where a student who had cerebral palsy, she has to be carried by her mother up the stairs every day to get to school. It was reported in the Sun. Every day. Who's at fault? The school, yes, definitely. But ultimately, it's the state, the Ministry of Education. Do they budget that? Is that included in the budget for all schools? It's compulsory. Physical access is poor, so is ICT, teacher aids and infrastructure, and digital aids. Employment. There's been systemic efforts to ensure PWDs enjoy equality of opportunity and to prevent and reduce all forms of discrimination. We need to give more PWDs job training for on-demand skills that need in this evolving labor market. Okay, I will skip a few. I know Washila's giving me that look. We need to raise awareness with incentives for heads of department in the civil service to hire and retain employees with disability. What do I mean by that? This includes making reasonable accommodation for PWDs, reasonable adjustments, needs that such that suitably qualified candidates may enjoy equal opportunities, employment opportunities during the hiring, when they file the application and hiring process. And once they're successful in their job application, they should be able to apply themselves fullest to their ability. They are often discriminated at the point of application. Lastly, Australia's Disability and Discrimination Act 1992 includes mental disability, learning differently, and thought process. This effort will not only benefit the disabled now, because we have an aging population. The number of people, I'm aging, I can see quite a few here aging. The number of us, of people suffering from old age illness like Alzheimer's, dementia is increasing. We need a mental health capacity like what Singapore has and UK has. These countries are setting the standards, and we have a long way to go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to our 5 speakers who have given us a snapshot of what's in the Manifesto Rakyat. We now come to the rather exciting moment, or the next exciting moment after listening to all our speakers, which is the official launch of our Manifesto Rakyat. First off, for the launch, we have a video montage prepared by Sylvia, our social media coordinator, which is a compilation of all our different activities as well as some of the policy issues. And with that really short video, we now move on to the first 2 endorsements of the Manifesto Rakyat. I'd like to call on Stanley representing GBN, as well as Beverly representing the CSO platform, And together with both of them, we will have Chihan, who will also join with the first signing and endorsement of the Manifesto Rakyat. Can we, yes, forward please. Jeng, jeng, jeng. Do we have music? Some like dramatic music here for us. Yes, please go ahead, Chihan. Yay. Beverly for the CSO platform for reform. Thank you. And Stanley for Gabungan Bertindak Malaysia. Thank you. Now we have our first 3 endorsements, and it's online now. We would like to call on the speakers as well as some of the policy coordinators who are here in the room to come forward. Just grab the cards. Yeah. Ashraf, would you like to accompany us? Ashraf, would you like to accompany us? Oh.
Ya, tes tadi aja.
Test. Kita akan buat canting. Last minute. Biasanya kita bersorak di jalan lah kan. Tapi kita bersorak di sini. Ada dua lah, hidup rakyat dan bangkit rakyat lah. Dan kalau sempat kita nyanyi sikit, boleh ke? Tak ada lah. Okay. Tes. Ada. Tes. Kenapa? Tes. Ada sikit. Ya. Okey. Tes. Hidup rakyat. Ada. Okay. Saya rasa semua berdiri lah. Boleh ke? Kalau canting bersorak masa duduk tak kuat lah perut. Minta rakan-rakan semua untuk bangun. Sekejap. Kita nak bersorak dalam dewan. Okay. Hidup rakyat. Hidup rakyat. Bangkit rakyat. Bangkit rakyat. Manifesto. Saya sebut Manifesto Rakyat lah. Manifesto. Hidup rakyat. Bangkit rakyat. Okey, terima kasih.
Okay. Is it working now? Can you hear me at the back? Yes, no. Yes, is it working now at the back? No, it's not working. You need me to throw my voice? Is it working? Can we start now? As we maybe we'll do while we wait for the mic to start working, I'd like to call on the speakers to come forward again with your chairs. They're moving into the question and answer session. While we are waiting to start this up, maybe may I call on the speakers and Tihan as the moderator to get your chair. Please, just grab your chair. Ryan, Jeffrey, Mira, Ari, and Philip.
No, only one. Okay, apparently they can hear me on Facebook, so I'm assuming that they'll be able to hear all our speakers too. To take all the questions and moderate the discussion. But meanwhile, to our audience on Facebook, please feel free to type your questions into the comment box, and we will also pass on those questions to our speakers here today. I'm just going to pass this one mic.
Thank you, Ashima. Thanks, media friends and TSO, congrats friends for coming. We are here right now. The session is open for any questions. Can be addressed in Sala, Swahili, English. We pass to relevant person to answer those specific questions the best that we can. All right. So I think the floor is open. We welcome any question. And when you have question, can you please come in front? There's a mic stand there. If you speak to the mic, I think the audience can hear, and we will answer from them. Mic's at the center.
The mic not working.
I'd like to invite a question from the floor first, yeah, and then while we're looking at the online comment section. Okay.
My name is Rasmi from Sebagai. My question is on question is with regard to the local government election. Now, you can notice that a lot of people sick and tired of politics, especially what's going on for the past few years. So, with now election is local government election will add more politics in the society, which will result in the people rejecting totally from being involved in any form of politics. And second is that how do we ensure the high voter turnout, as we can see in the previous local, the state government elections, the low voter turnout because of the people are sick and tired of politics. How do we ensure that the local government politics is also high? Can you get my sorry?
Hello. Yes.
Yes, it's for online participants. My question is to Sebagai with regard to the local government election that you are proposing. And since now the people are sick and tired of the politics that's going on with regard to the parliament autonomy. So how do we ensure with this introduction of local government election, the people will be responding well? That's one. Second is also on the voter turnout. How do we ensure the high voter turnout for the local government election? Thank you.
Yeah, I think first of all, the people are fed up because they are disempowered. I can say anything I want, but my voice is heard. If you have a local council election, then the people that are standing for election include your community leaders, include the riot. No? So, and if the councillor that is chosen is not good, and not for the politicians. But currently, all councillors are politically appointed. So whoever is appointed better please their political boss first. So that's one thing. All right. The other thing is the problem in our country is caused by empathy. We have got so many people that are not interested at all, and they think that it's so great that I don't want to turn up for election. Everybody is bad. But these are the kind of attitude that is ruining the country. So now we need to the Manifesto Rakyat report that people become more involved, feel more empowered, and fight for structural changes. Once local council election is brought in again, all of you will stand for election. And all of you can demand from whoever that is elected, you have to be elected, you have to serve us. So very different scenario completely. Right now, everything is politics. So I think that will be a great change. So now the responsibility is really with the Rakyat. The Rakyat is just too apathetic. They just sit back. And I think the worst thing now that's happening is a lot of Rakyat talking very intelligently in the Facebook, in the WhatsApp, but they will not lift a finger or walk to attend any events. So I think that's the problem that we're facing.
Thanks, for the response. Can take the next question. The mic's working right now. We can hear you loud and clear. Is this?
Good afternoon, everyone. If I don't ask my question, I won't be able to sleep at night. Just to reiterate one of Irene's point is that people don't see the impact of abusing migrant workers in Malaysia. And one of the questions we can ask Malaysians is, why do you think the minimum wage has been so low? It's ridiculously low if you look at the GDP and the potential that Malaysia has. Our struggle is politicians have told us in our face, we are not going to touch this topic because it makes us look that we are not pro-Malaysian. A few very prominent names have told us that without blinking an eye. So we have that struggle. Don't get us wrong, we are not pro-Malaysian workers, we are not pro-migrants. We want justice for everyone. We are social justice organizations, but you have a few million people who are being exploited 12 to 16 hours a day. And I can say that the ministries involved are clearly not interested. So you can have people's voice, you have solidarity with the migrants and refugees, but you have very difficult structures which I think it's a result of accumulation over 20 to 30 years of abuse. It's not overnight that this mismanagement happened. So I think Malaysians, you have to move from that Twitter, from that WhatsApp group into real life action. One example is what Rajiv in BJ did. So he called us, he said, let's talk about forced labor. The same faces came, my God. My friends came, migrants came. No one in BJ came. When you're talking about forced labor, how many companies, GLCs are on the CVP ban? So we have that struggle. I think before a few years ago, Rajiv also tried public budgets. He said very few came. So I'm very worried. We need to also think, how do you facilitate Malaysians into activism? Yeah. My last point is a bit on the democratic processes of lawmaking. So for example, okay, the Ministry of Human Resource, they publish amendments. We as citizens give our proposals. But by the time the bill is debated in Parliament, we have no clue about the quality, what input has given. We may not even be informed of the parliamentary debate of how it's going to go. Yeah, everyone is asking questions. That's good. That's important. But there's a fundamental flaw in how policies are made. So then you will have a bottleneck. You have Malaysians coming abroad or on board to talk about it. But you go to Parliament, we don't know how laws are made. So yeah, just thought-provoking comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian, for the questions. Yeah, I think there are 3 questions there. Is there anyone from the panel who have to address to Adrian's question? Want to say something?
I think this is exactly what the first speaker
this is what was also mentioned in the first question. The disgruntled feelings of Malaysians of powerlessness, so they think incomfortable. I think Adrian is also asking a question related to that. How do we break this apathy? I think truth will break all the lies that are floating around. So I think we focus on that. Let us focus on the truth of what is happening in this country. Manifesto Rakyat is actually showcasing some of the truth of the situation of the country. Why are laws made like this? Because the government doesn't feel that it has to be accountable to anyone. They don't feel that. They get a bit riled up when the Customs and Border Police at US says no Malaysian palm oil into this country or no Malaysian gloves into this country. Then they get a bit upset. But this is exactly what all of us have been saying all the while. They just don't care. And I think voters need to realize that just casting your vote once and then for 5 years you don't do anything else will not change the situation. You cannot just simply cast a vote and say, okay, now I've given power to you to run the country, now you run the country. We also need to be involved in running the country. And I think that is one of the points that the local democracy group is saying. We basically have forgotten how to run the country ourselves. So we just give it to somebody. So I think when we realize that, then let's make a difference in GE15. Let it be our election. It's not the election for any party, but it is an election that belongs to us, and we decide, and the decision is not just made on that voting day. The decision will be held to the government. We decided this. Why aren't we doing this? So I think we need to change that kind of thing, which is not easy, but it can be done.
Yes, please.
I also want to touch on what Adrian said just now about the process of legislative reform. In fact, when the women's process, I'm part of the JAC group, when we drafted the sexual harassment legislation, the government set up a project team, like a task force. And that project team included multi-sectoral agencies and, of course, the Attorney General's chambers. After 2 years of discussing with the group, with this project team, what came out of this whole process was legislation, a bill that we had no idea what it was going to be in the end when it was pushed, when the Attorney General's chambers took over, and then we only saw it at the first reading in Parliament, which was a watered down legislation, which we couldn't believe that this is what has happened after 2 years of discussion with the AGs and other agencies. So we are often told, OSA, OSA. We are beneficiaries of this legislation. We need to be involved. We don't want to water down legislation. So something has to be done in the process in which the legislative reform is put out in Parliament.
If anyone wants to add to the response? Okay. The floor is open again. Welcome more questions. Identify yourself.
Okay. I'm John Koo. I am represented the voice of majority of rakyat or voter. My question is, I got 3 questions. Just wondering if any politician support this Manifesto Rakyat, because I didn't see any of them here this launch. Second question, I believe many rakyat were not aware of this Manifesto Rakyat. What publicity and how much money and effort will be spent on this publicity? Third question, Manifesto Rakyat is good because it is inclusive. Problem is the certain sectors are receiving a lot of benefits from the government. Example, 1.7 million government civil servants and businessmen are getting direct benefit. How are they going to support your manifesto? Because end of the day, majority of voters decide who will be the next government. To be fair, at the end of the day, the people who benefited from the government will not change. So the question is, what sort of benefits are you going to give to them to sway their voter? Why President Marcos' son won this presidency election? Because he promised the people, the change, the right are looking for, basically improving their livelihood on bread and butter issue. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the question, and thanks for your contribution to this Manifesto Rakyat. You submitted a few assumptions. I'll answer the first 2. Talking about politicians, we, Secretariat, has sent out a personal invitation to more than 40 politicians. Yeah, so we have seen one camp today, but because this today we just had a launch, so whether they will support or not, we will engage them. We will ask them. If you don't see their name on our endorsement list, they are not supporting. So later we also set up an MP profiling and other profiling website. We will ask them about their stance on all the manifesto items, whether they support the environmental actions, education actions. Then you make the judgment whether they are the one that you worthy of your work. Okay, we will do our best to engage them. Yeah, definitely we'll go to talk to them. Okay, and secondly, how much money will be spent on publicity of this Manifesto Rakyat? We are the NGOs. We have our limitation and constraint, but we have a lot of passionate people here in the team, and we are expert in, or we are well-known activists in certain domains for a long time. We have our networks. We will go to them and asking people for endorsement, just like you probably also have your personal network. If you think this project, this initiative worthy of support, worthy of endorsement, please tell your friends, tell your network to read it out and support, and tell more people about this. To tell your politicians, your elected representatives, that these are the people's voices. What is your view regarding this reform agenda, reform proposals? What are your views? Ask politicians, okay? And get their response. Then make your own judgment. All right? Is there anything Hannah want to add? All right.
I think one thing very important is that we need to understand that we are living in a democracy, and it's the people who have to make their voice heard. So we have a very strong reliance on politicians, but what has happened to our voices? So if we are not happy with them, we change them. We can demand this accountability from them. So the problem is that we are really being living in this idea that the politicians are the only ones who are going to be able to save us. But don't forget, if the people did not make their voice heard in 2018, we wouldn't have a change of government. So similarly, we have the power. We are all now empowered. So let's make a stand and demand accountability from our people.
stop voting based on political parties, but based on the candidates. I think this is a sort of major mind shift that we as a people need to have, because we have been following the whole politics in the past, and then we just leave everything up to them. Then what happens next? So let's take ownership, because this is our Malaysia, this is our country, and us as a people make this decision. Yeah.
I just want to make one small comment about the Philippine elections. Though the son of Marcos was elected this time, the people in Philippines, the young people probably do not know that it was the people of Philippines who actually got rid of this man's father. Marcos was got rid of by people's actions. Nothing else. Under a very suppressive and repressive government, they went out on the streets and made their voices heard. That brought that man down. So I think we need to remember that his son got the voices, got the hearts of the young people in Philippines through the social media, because he put a lot of money into that, and that seemed to have worked for him for now. But let's see how long he will stay.
Okay, thanks. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Santa Ojithan from Malaysiakini. Thank you for this document and for letting us contribute to it. And I like how inclusive your website is with the option of either endorsing the whole manifesto or individual parts, and your plans to do a profiling of the candidates before the election. So my question is, after the election, will you continue to have some kind of tracking mechanism on whether the candidates, once elected, raise these issues in Parliament or vote for such and such legislation? Is there a possibility to continue tracking after the elections? Thank you.
Thanks, Santa, for the question. Definitely, I will do based on our Manifesto Rakyat. The purpose that we want to produce this is for them to copy. It's making it very easy for us to work with them, whoever elected in the end, so that we actually have an avenue, have a bridge to talk to them, because we share the similarity in terms of the manifesto promises or the agenda. So definitely, once that we whoever got elected based on their manifesto, we will use our manifesto and the similarities as a bridge to talk to them and make sure they fulfill their promise. So these are the people's voices. They should not be betrayed. So yeah, definitely, we'll do our best.
Today is actually the beginning of the journey to empower the rakyat. We have known that NGOs have been working very hard with issuing a lot of statements. It falls on deaf ears. Only the rakyat that activated, they will listen. So number one, politicians who don't endorse it probably don't feel that the riot's voice is important. So their inaction itself is answer to us. The other thing is, as we monitor all the people, the candidates, we are able to the MP profiling to recognize if migrants is important to me, who are the MPs that or candidates have endorsed the migrant issue. So you can actually select it. When we are doing this software, we look at one of the first candidates just to find out the background. What we do is we provide all the news articles about this person so that you don't forget. All right. So I didn't know this politician, but when I searched online about him, then I found out that he is the one who criticized the Sabah girl for climbing up the tree. You know the name? I didn't. I look at him, I don't even recognize his face. But when I start looking and putting in all the profile back, he is Deputy Communications Minister. No? So quite a high profile person. Now the problem that we are unable to decide individuals' capability is because there is no profiling software that tells us all we do is vote for DAP, vote for MCA. No, all these things are just hearsay. So from now on, we will be making more educated judgment about people right now, what they stand for, so that we know who to select. But beyond that, whether they keep up to the promise, the riot will continue monitoring. Only if the riot is fully aware, engaged, the country will change, not through politicians. Because politicians, as they come into power, they are good politicians. But don't forget that at the sidelines, there are businesses that want a shortcut, and they will corrupt our politicians. So that is why politicians who don't subscribe to declaration and all are not protecting themselves against all this corruption. So you have already seen some of the politicians that have fallen because of the craziness of power.
I think it's time to bring back IO1 awards. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeffrey, for the response. We still have time for a few more questions. Yeah. Anyone from floor would like to ask? Mandarin? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Seven. From Shanti, there's a question. Is there any party that voters can rely on to carry out or a semblance of solving some of the rooted problems facing this country? It's a really big question. So anyone wants to take on this question? Ryan, you want to try?
I think once again it goes back to my point. The people has to make the decision. I think earlier there were representatives from certain political parties here as well. They were they were listening. I mean, pointing to the cameras. I mean, nothing else. Okay, so I think we have representatives from political parties. Of course, this engagement work is required by us as well. We are going to continue, and I think the Manifesto Rakyat team, CSO platform, and GBM as well will continue those engagements with them, and also to encourage them to adhere and to also fulfill certain demands. If possible, we want all demands. But of course, you know, they will have certain reservations here and there. That's the political reality today. It's a hope, but if we don't start from somewhere, then we definitely won't be able to move anywhere, right? So again, this is not the work of political parties only. It's the work of every Malaysian. So I think we have to be very clear with this, because we need to hold everyone accountable for all their efforts and not just leave it to them. That's what has been happening. We have left it to them. We have empty promises, we have broken promises, and after that, we are all lethargic, we are all upset. But have we actually go to our MPs and demanded them and asked them, why are you not fulfilling whatever I'm asking you to do when I voted you in? So we are most of us are all most of the times we are all disempowered. But let us all empower ourselves, bring back that hope. Don't lose hope, because by losing hope, then we won't have a better future for Malaysia. Yeah.
I would open for one last question. Okay. Anyone from the floor would like to ask a question to the panelists in front?
My name is Sarajun. I'm with GBM and also Amira. Just a little comment before I ask my question to Irene, just to add up. I used to employ up to 300 foreign workers. And most of the workers, when they come to Malaysia, they pay so much of money that they sell their land or take loan at a high interest. Even after 5 years, they still cannot pay. They go back highly debted. And you know, every other day, I have to go to the police station somebody is always picked up. They just look at you, you look like a foreign worker, especially Bangladeshi or Nepal. Any uniformed person will stop you and take money from you, demand whatever inside your pocket account, take away your handphone. You know, you don't give them, they give you trouble. Even a bomba uniform fellow also can collect money. So anybody in uniform, these foreign workers are actually very scared. So I pity them. I've experienced a lot trying to help foreign workers and how they are exploited quite bad in human. I've met them when they are in their own countries, even India, Pakistan, Nepal. So I got very in-depth experience about dealing with foreign workers. Now, question on Sabah, I just received a message from a friend who is complaining that there is nothing much about Sabah. I don't know, I have no idea. So if you have anything to mention, please do. And if not enough for the rights of people of Sabah and Sarawak, please in the next edition, add it up. Okay. Now, there's one question that actually people feel very uncomfortable to speak about. Is the creeping Islamization in Malaysia. It's making too many people very uncomfortable. For saying that you don't have to become an Islamic country to practice good Islamic values, and for saying that 45 top countries that practices Islamic values in the world are all non-Islamic countries. I was charged in the Taiping court, and I still have the case I have to answer for insulting Islam. So I don't know what Islam they are talking about, but you feel very uncomfortable. A lot of people talk to me about it. Because of Muslims, children fasting in school, non-Muslim also cannot eat. This is quite unfair. I think Malaysian government should have more moderate type of Muslims in policy-making agencies in Malaysia to make it, the good values of Islam should be seen to be practiced by the people, not just say, and then stop punishing when they act like little gods and have, the punishment is increasing every day just because you don't agree with certain form of the religion. So this is one thing I think you have to take, because it is making life of everybody very difficult, even for Muslims themselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Arjun. I would like to invite Vivian and Sebagai to answer. I wish I was always lend voices for our East Malaysian friends to share their experience or their views on those issues. I think let me start with Vivian.
Okay. Can I? Using my okay, I'll introduce myself. My name is William, CSO platform for Sarawak chapter. I just want to answer your question on the Sarawak. Why Sarawak no issue? Because actually for the past 1 year, we did ask the NGO in Sarawak, even the members, public, to send their points to address the issue, but it seems like people themselves is not really proactive to voice out their issue in Sarawak. So I mean, like, of course, we want Sarawak issues more, but I can put issues, but I need to invite all Sarawakians to give their issue and address the issue rather than we prepare the issue for them. That's not the right way to push for the Manifesto Rakyat. So it's not fair. That's why we only have 3 submissions from Sarawak, but we do hope that Manifesto Rakyat will still go on for the few elections so that people can address the issue. So I guess Sarawak is a bit slow, so that's why they cannot hear issue from there, because people still takut lah. There's a phrase that Anang labang perintah is like the word that you cannot against the government. So Sarawak need a lot of work to do there. Then we want to invite CSO NGOs, West Malaysia and Sabah to support us and to motivate the members there so that they can berani bersuara. Thank you.
When I first joined as the Sabah coordinator, I was quite shocked. There was only 3 submissions from the Rakyat, and it shows that some even like now, because the manifesto is finalized and we couldn't add on points anymore. When it's spreaded, some CSO are mentioned. It's West Malaysian centric because there were less representation from the East. What is the West Malaysia role on making them to voice out? Even as the coordinator, it's not fair for for the Rakyat if we issue. But then if it's coming from the coordinator, where is the, I mean, how, so it's not Manifesto Rakyat. So although it's like only few issue was raised, we can still make this Manifesto Rakyat work in Sabah. And then, but then again, for the Sabah, it's the most mainly politicized issue, especially when the general election is coming. So, yeah.
Thanks for the response from Jibin and William. I want to just give a little bit comment about the participation of Sabahans and Sarawakians in the Manifesto Rakyat. They are actually not restricted to just Sabah and Sarawak chapters. Actually, we have contributed, for example, Ika Roslan from Tiada Guru. She brought many issues to the National Front. Yeah, talking about the problems back in Sabah. So her contribution, you can find her contribution in the education chapter and anti-corruption. So yeah, so I don't think that we should judge based on what is only written in the Sabah and Sarawak chapters, but I can see that there are some commonality of the issues to link up to the policy areas such as education and anti-corruption. So I think that's fair to say that. Okay. This Q&A session, I think, is about time to close. I will pass the mic back to the moderator, the MC, Washila, to continue. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chihan, and thank you to all our speakers. Thank you again. As we draw to a close, I would now like to call on Mr. Stanley Yong, representing DBN, who is the acting chairperson of Gabungan Berita Malaysia, for his closing remarks today.
Salam sejahtera, and thank you for the moderator, Fasila. Manifesto Rakyat Project Coordinators Dr. Lim Chihan, Beverly, leaders of members of NGOs, and also the very good friends, crowd here from the media. Thank you for the closing remark for this momentous, very meaningful milestone project called Manifesto Rakyat. I must actually thank you, the team of executives of GBM, and also the EXCO of the CSO platform, who have actually accomplished a very great task, a very great vision in getting the Manifesto Rakyat ready for publication. Manifesto Rakyat shall take a grassroots, bottom-up approach from the collection of people's voices, desire, which is very encouraging at the moment, and we are getting the results. Initially, we managed to do so after hearing the response from Sarawak. Probably is still coming up, and I think we should follow up with them. For the past 1.5 years, since the idea of Manifesto Rakyat was considered, the emergency declaration preserved their power, but not looking after the interests of the Rakyat. That happened during the worsening COVID-19 pandemic, which is very, very bad. GBM objected and challenged the declaration of emergency along with Bersih, Ikram, and Abim. While the livelihood of the Rakyat was badly affected by COVID pandemic, we heard people's angry voices such as, where is democracy? Which direction the government is taking us to? And there's little response, positive response from the government then. There is hence a need for composing a comprehensive Manifesto Rakyat in putting forward constructive ideas on the reform of institutions, sometimes we call institutional reform, reform of governance, rebuilding of this broken and corrupted nation. These are also our expectation of our politicians in this country as such. GBM focuses on nation building, and we are determined to create a racial and religious harmonious society. We emphasize a lot on social justice, as this is going to forge closer relationship within the multi-ethnic communities. For the past 1.5 years, GBM also involved in the Rashtra Busters movement in our bid to eradicate corruption in this country. And of late, the Sheridan move, party hopping, and unethical political maneuver while backdoor trade on power and seats are simply devastating and not tolerable. The general public's distrust towards the political system and parties has actually probably reached a new height, and this is quite worrying. Politicians in power in this country seldom, or in fact, do not listen to the Rakyat. Empty promises and lip services from all of them, or most of them, are in existence for a long, long while. But on the contrary, which is such good, we see NGOs working diligently on grassroots community level, and this is crucial to rebuild the people's faith and trust so that changes will take place so long unity is restored for common good. In this effort to talk to the people on this ground, and the proposals, action plan, implementation of community projects will improve the Rakyat's general well-being. For the same objective, Manifesto Rakyat is crafted to build bridges in the social sphere for engagement, dialogue, and seeking solutions in solidarity to solicit changes in this country. We hope Manifesto Rakyat will serve the purpose of bringing social awareness and deep-rooted impacts in rebuilding the country before and after the youthful and active who need them will work more harder and will work more efficiently. It is our hope that this positive narratives successfully also. To the political parties, we wish them to take this Manifesto Rakyat seriously, and it will be very good if these leaders of political parties comprehend and meet those who paramount movement is very, very important. Soon, GBM and the rest of the NGO shall work together to embark national roadbook and roadshows to get across messages down to the community levels. At the same time, we shall seek value endorsement from everybody. After the launching today, the campaign shall commence. And last but not least, we will make a great difference and impact to this country with Manifesto Rakyat in place, and hopefully we will continue to observe, to learn, and also to get the Rakyat's involvement in it. And last, all components of Malaysia. There is Malaysia. I hope this will get across to the Rakyat to empower them and get them to be more activated, and they will be probably more acknowledged, and to get the signal that we are going towards a better Malaysia, and we shall work on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanley Yong. And this concludes our official launch of the Manifesto Rakyat and the press conference. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Asia. Email, which is manifestorakyat2021@gmail.com. Thank you all and have a good night.